Howdy everyone, Poacher here with an Age of Magic video, and in today's video we are looking at Jeanne, specifically her awakenings. She is the next hero in line to receive awakenings, and it seems they are back on track on releasing awakenings for older heroes, so hopefully more will come in soon because there are some heroes that desperately need it. So we'll go over her skills, what the awakenings do, and how they're going to affect her and potentially the Council of Knights or any team you play her with. I haven't been told much, but I've been given a little bit of information about the Jeanne awakenings in the sense that when her awakenings are available, there will also be an event that accompanies it. And while that event is active, the awakening cost for Jeanne will come at a 50% discount. So her awakenings will cost 100 instead of 200 for the duration of the event. After that, they will jump back to 200. So I'll let you guys know when we see more about the event, how it works, what you need to do, and so forth, but that is what I know at the moment. Jumping into the awakenings, we're not going to say how valuable these awakenings are. It is still far too early, and I have no game experience on where you could use them. So we're just going to go over the facts. Her basic Bastard Strike, because Bastard is not a swear word. Awakening its ability, damage is increased by 50%, restores more HP with every spark. No longer loses sparks when using the ability. In terms of basic abilities, Jeanne has probably one of the better ones in the game. It offers damage and healing at the same time, and the healing is increased depending on how many sparks she has and how many allies she has from the Knights of the Council on the squad. You're most likely going to be playing her with Knights of the Council, so this healing is always going to be at its highest. But the damage the ability does as well, for a basic, is still pretty significant, especially when paired with her passive, which increases damage against dark enemies. Now, the damage, I believe, also is increased with sparks, but again, that's through her passive. So yeah, in terms of basic abilities, it's not horrible. It's definitely not the worst we've seen. Those ones that come with just a plain damage increase, this is offering more healing as well, which for a healer is always good. Moving on to Jeanne's second ability, we have Blessed Blade. For every debuff removed from an ally, their initiative is increased by 10% when awakened. Damage is increased by 50%, ignores a higher percent of armor for every spark, removes fewer sparks of light per ability cast. Now, the ability itself removes debuffs from allies, so now you are going to get the boost in initiative when the debuffs are removed. Jeanne, in terms of healers, and in terms of characters to today's standard, is actually quite a slow character. I believe her speed comes in at 212. Now, this is good for her because obviously your enemy is going to go first. They're going to apply their debuffs, and then you're going to come along and strip them and give everyone a bit of initiative. There is obviously downfalls to this as well with her being slow. She could be crowd controlled. She could be killed. She could straight up be killed. There are many characters in the game now that just have a massive amount of elimination or execution straight off the bat. Keeping in mind, though, that there's also Siegfried on the team who can protect Jeanne as he starts with a taunt. Again, there are many characters who can bypass taunt. In saying that, off topic, it would be very nice to see Siegfried when his awakenings come to the game. It would be interesting, I think, if he could be given an unremovable, unavoidable taunt. Allow the Knights to be able to set up and get things out. Obviously, AoE are still going to be able to bypass that, but I think that would definitely help that character. But we're not talking about Siegfried. I can do a different video about that. So yeah, she is protected to begin with, and she is slow, so she's going to be able to get the most out of this. Heals each allied knight of the council for 30% of max HP, plus 5% for every debuff removed from this knight. So yeah, the ability has huge healing potential as well. Deals damage to one target. Again, can do a lot of damage mixed with her passive. If the target is a dark character, Jeanne ignores 20% of armor. That goes to 50%, I believe, when awakened, and removes 2 sparks of the light. That drops down to 1. So again, removing less sparks from her is better because she's more effective when she has her sparks. So overall, I think it's actually a really good awakening for her, especially this first part. Removing the debuffs gives initiative to the characters. The Knights just need to be able to perform their abilities. It's as simple as that. They can fall off quite quickly. So giving them time to set up, to do damage, to eliminate. You've got Brynhild, for example, who can stun, who can do a lot of damage, especially when she goes into her Valkyrie mode. Remember, the Knights are almost like the Super Saiyans in Dragon Ball Z. They all have this version of themselves where they can awaken or become stronger, turn Super Saiyan, and they get a bunch of benefits when they do so. But to do so, they need to last at least one round of combat. So I think getting their turns out quicker is always going to be beneficial to them. So overall, I think this is definitely an important awakening for the character, just simply because of the initiative boost that she gives the allies on her team. Moving on to Jeanne's third ability, we have Outside Intervention. Awakening this revives an ally with a higher percent of HP. Increase HP percent of the randomly revived ally. Every spark adds a 50% chance to revive another random light ally with 60% HP. Removes fewer sparks of light per ability cast. So let's go over the ability itself. Revives a random light ally with 50% max HP. That's going to be increased. Each spark of light adds 50% chance at 30% max HP. So that's going to jump to 60. Honestly, this awakening out of all of them so far is my least favorite. I believe that they have focused on the wrong parts of the ability. Obviously, removing the fewer sparks is great. It removes 3 sparks when cast, so lowering that's going to be awesome. But this ability, its essence is revival. So it revives one ally guaranteed, and then has a chance to revive a second one depending on light sparks. Honestly, I think that awakening this should have just given you straight up 2 revivals. Just 2 heroes come back to life with the same amount of HP. Jump to 60% if you want. That's cool. I think in terms of what the heroes in the game are capable of at the moment, I don't think that would have been too ridiculous, having this ability revive 2 characters. Damage taken by the revived character is capped at 10%. I think this also should have either been increased or decreased. So like 5% of their max HP, or given more turns of it. 3 turns, jump it to 6 turns, for example. Again, I just don't see that being hugely influential on the current meta of the game, but also gives the character a little bit more use. So if you're going to use them in any PvE content where you need to use them, I think that would definitely help the faction. So out of all the awakenings so far, this is my least favorite, and just simply because I feel like it's focusing on the wrong things, especially the spark thing. I think a second revival based off sparks is something you can't really control, so it's not always going to be able to be used to its most effectiveness. So I think having some way of guaranteeing this would have been the way to go. Finally, we have Jeanne's passive Light Guardian. The awakening damage to dark characters is increased by a higher percentage for every spark. Fewer sparks of light required to activate Holy Image, so that's her Super Saiyan form. In Holy Image mode, more HP is restored to allies at the start of the turn, and the Bastard Strike ability heals allies as if Jeanne had 6 sparks. At the end of every round in Raids and Cradle of Chaos, Jeanne restores 50% HP to all allied heroes. She also revives 2 random allies with 50% HP. So very interesting stuff here. Let's go over some of the important stuff. So Jeanne starts the battle with 3 sparks of light. That's in the ability. Jeanne receives 1 spark of light for each buff lost by a light ally. So that is in any manner. They could expire, they could be removed, they could run their use, whatever. They will gain her a spark of light. Each spark of light increases Jeanne's damage to dark characters by 15%, so that's going to be increased. When the number of sparks on Jeanne exceeds 8, that drops down to 6 when the ability is awakened. Her initiative is restored to 100%, and she receives the Holy Image buff for 3 turns. This effect cannot be removed or blocked. It's one of the few buffs in the game. Each one of the knights has their own version of this, and they're all unremovable. They are permanent until they expire. So in this Holy Image form, Jeanne doesn't stack sparks while under Holy Image. At the start of her turn, heals all light allies by 12%. That's going to be increased of their max HP. Jeanne's damage to dark characters is increased to 120%. So far exceeding the damage you would get from the sparks themselves. If any enemy is revived, Jeanne immediately revives a random light ally with 30% max HP. So that isn't mentioned. There's no increase to that. I wish it was higher. And it is a shame that she can only do this in her Holy Image, but it's easier to get the Holy Image form going. So it's nice to see that they're putting a bit of focus into PvE content. When you're awakening older heroes, you've got to realize, like, what is their relevance in the game? It's no longer PvP. There's very few situations where PvP is going to be relevant to these heroes, and that's going to be eventually, hopefully, when we get a game mode like Clan Wars again, where every squad matters. That's where it's going to matter. But until then, awakenings, on the most part, are going to be PvE orientated? How are they going to be effective in PvE? Because that's where you're going to use these heroes. So it would have been nice to see that this ability awakening also gained kind of a similar set of abilities or skills or whatever or stats is the word I'm after, stats to Belladonna, where awakening Jeanne would have given her more HP. I think that would have made her a lot more viable. At the moment, the only places you're really using Jeanne are in one of the event raids, Cradle of Chaos, and she is usable in Nightmare Raid, but you have to consider that the other faction usable in her section is the Guardians of Order, or the Goos. So who are you really using? The Knights of the Council or the Goos? Even with these awakenings, I still see the Goos outperforming the Knights. Though these are nice, definitely nice. I think these are going to help a lot of new players leveling up, and if you've got Jeanne, that's going to be great. But yeah, it would have been nice to see a little bit more power in these awakenings and revolving more around PvE content. I think that would have given the character a lot more value. Overall, though, they're nice awakenings for the character. I don't know how it's going to influence the faction as a whole. There are still a few characters on the team that need awakening. I think one of the important ones is going to be Siegfried. I think him being able to, in some way, just protect his allies could make the faction a lot better than what it is at the moment. But yeah, there you go. They're on the horse again. They're trying to get awakenings out for older heroes. I think it's good. Even if they aren't useful in a sense, I think it's always good to have the option there in case for whatever reason in the future there is content that needs these heroes. There is going to always be that way to increase their power. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below. I will answer it to the best of my ability. And wherever you're on the world, until next time, please take care of yourself.